Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi friends, how are you? I hope you all are well, health and stay within the compliance requirement of our industry. My name is Hema Sharma. I'm again with you with very interesting topic, that is software vendor audit. Let's start guys. Let's discuss about this SVA, software vendor audit. As our previous presentation, we already discussed about the computer system validation, where we learned about the mode of the definitions given by different types of the guidelines and how can we conduct the CSV. Let's read again. The purpose of the validation is to confirm the computerized system specification conform to the user's needs and intended use by the examination and provision of documented and objective evidence that the particular requirement can be consistently fulfilled. Validation should establish confidence in the accuracy, reliability and consistency in the performance of the system, and it should also ensure that all necessary technical and procedural control are implemented, confirming compliance with the good documentation practice for the electronic data generated by the system. So guys, because we give the money for our business to a vendor that come to our site and give a computer system which we use in our GxP system, so who come with us to help us to give the compliances and to improve our business should be validated. Assessment is required. So there is the topic of the software audit is very important for us. Let's come. In this presentation, we can divide our discussion in this subject, like regulatory requirement, what is the audit method, preparation of audit, execution of audit, post-audit, warning letters. Some of the warning letters here for discussion. Regulatory requirement, a very much known guideline, that is General Principles of Software Validation, final guidance for the industry and FDA staff from January 11, 2002 is very good guideline which can guide us about the requirement of the supplier, requirement of the computer system, in which some bullet points collected here. The manufacturer is responsible for ensuring that the product development methodology used for the OTS of the self-software developer are appropriate and sufficient for the device manufacturer's intended use of that OTS software. Software for the applications may be developed in-house or the under contract. However, software is frequently purchased off the shelf for a particular intended use. All production and or quality system software, even if purchased off the shelf, should have documented requirement that fully define its intended use and information against which testing result and other evidence can be compared to show that the software is validated for its intended use. Where possible and depending upon the device risk involved, the device manufacturer should consider auditing the vendor's design and development methodologies used in the construction of the OTS software and should assess the development and validation documentation generated for the OTS software. Such audits can be conducted by the device manufacturer or by a qualified third party. The audit should be demonstrate that the vendor's procedure for and the result of the verification and validation activities performed the OTS software are appropriate and sufficient for the safety and effectiveness requirement of the medical device to produce using that software. Depending upon the risks of device produced, the role of OTS software in the process, the ability to audit the vendor and the sufficiency of the vendor supplied information, the use of OTS software or equipment may or may not be appropriate, especially if there are suitable alternatives available. The device manufacturer should also consider the implication, if any, for the continued maintenance and support of the OTS software. So guys, we see some main points of that guidelines which is include here, and we can understand there is the requirement. In Code of Federal Regulation CFR 21 Part 11, Section 211.34, consultants mention here. Consultants advise to the manufacturers processing, packing or holding of drug products shall have sufficient education, training and experience or any combination thereof to advise on the subject for which they are retained. Record shall be maintained, static the name, address and qualification of any consultant and type of service they provided. Now, what is mentioned in EU? In EudraLex Volume 4, in Annexure 11 computerized system, we say about the vendor also. In the PICS, Guide to Good Manufacturing Practice for Medical Product, Annexure 11 computerized system, here is mentioned for supplier and service provider requirements. In PICS, very good guidelines, which is very helpful for us to how can we use a GxP system in a regulatory environment. Good practice for the computerized system in the regulatory GxP environments. Here mention about the supplier, software developer and quality management relationship. What is the bullet point of this guideline? When third parties, example suppliers, service provider are used, example to provide, install, configure, integrate, validate, maintain via remote access, modify or retain a computerized system or related service for data processing, formal agreement must exist between the manufacturer and any third party. So guys, there should be the agreement, okay? And these agreements should include clear statement of the responsibilities of the third parties. IT department should be considered analog. The completeness and reliability of a supplier are key factor when the selecting a product or the service provider. The need for an audit should be based upon the risk assessment. Okay, so the need of the audit should be based upon the risk assessment. Documentation supplied with the commercial of the self product should be reviewed by regulated user to check that user requirements are fulfilled. Quality system and audit information related to supplier or the developer of software and implemented system should be made available to inspector on the request. The regulated user should take all the responsible steps to ensure that the system has been developed in accordance with an appropriate quality management system. The supplier should be assessed appropriately. So, we can see the requirement of the assessment of our vendor for the computer system used in GxP environment. To understand the audit method, there is always, we have the special method of 5W and 1H. So let's start to understand about the audits with who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who? The user who want to fulfill the requirement of a software for the continue business. The manufacturer and the vendor of the software to continue the business in a regulatory environment. All parties within supply chain associated with the GxP computerized system shall be evaluated. In case of manufacturers and supplier are different, then assessment shall be done by the manufacturer through the supplier. In case of who, we are saying the exemption from the evaluation. Assessment for the vendor of the standard infrastructure software, but not limited to Microsoft Office Suite operating system and hardware, but limited to the servers, routers, and switches can be exception. Assessment of the third party organization whose employees permanently work and follow the internal procedure can be exempted. What should do? What? By remote audit, on-site audit, cautionary, and basic work. This we have to do. Where? We can do by the remote audit, we can do by the on-site audit. When? Prior to purchase any software, prior to validation activities, investigation on any incident or the event is a part of the audit. Periodically review of the vendor. So we have the SOP for the audit management for the software vendor, which can be explained all these things very well way. Why? As we see, regulatory requirement, documentation requirement, value of investment, because I'm going to do business. So how can I going to cost that? What is the value of my cost is the value of the investment. Knowledge improvement. For the knowledge improvement, how can the vendor manage all the things? So vendor audit and the assessment provide a high level of confidence that vendor is reliable and their product and the service will meet functional, technical, and regulatory expectation and the requirement. How? Remote audit, online meeting with the vendor by the manufacturer representative. On-site audit, manufacturer representatives conduct formal audit at the vendor site. Cautionary is manufacturer representatives send a self-assessment to the vendor and review responses. Basic work, manufacturer represented investigation the public domain information and contact other users. So these are the methods for assessment or the audit. So what is the audit process? Audit method selection, then audit preparation, then audit conduction, and after audit, post-audit activities. So this is the audit procedure. Let's see what happened. Depend upon the direct or indirect impact upon the quality, safety, and efficacy of product on the customer. So the method of the audit can be selected on the basis of the quality, safety, and efficacy of the product on the customer. Okay. Next, audit preparation. For the audit preparation, audit notification, audit agreement, audit team selection, checklist, document reviews. Okay. Let's see with the audit notification and agreement. Step first, select the vendor for the audit and intend to audit. 2, provide audit plan detail regarding audit purpose and the scope, audit standards, audit agenda and schedules, checklist, proposed date, number of auditors. Reach agreement on the audit dates and time, documents to review in the advance. In this case, the audit standard is very important. Which type of audit we want to do? From where we have to take the references for the audit standards. So here is some examples, like if biological regulations, 21 CFR 600, 21 CFR 820. Devices guidance of the software used in medical devices. Guidance according to device for content for pre-market submission for the software contained in medical device. So these are the example, like blood 21 CFR 606, clinical 21 CFR 50, 21 CFR 56, and computerized system used in clinical investigation. For the lab, regulation is 21 CFR 58. For the general regulation, as you know, 21 CFR 11, electronic record, electronic signature. Guidance, part 11. Guidance, general principle of software validation. References, FDA Office of Regulatory Affairs, Laboratory Manual. Drug regulation, 21 CFR 211. Drug regulation, current good manufacturing practice in the finished pharmaceuticals. Drug references, FDA ORA guide to inspection of computerized system in drug processing. Now other guidelines we can take like blood guidance, PICS, PA005, clinical guidelines, ICH E6, clinical regulation, EudraLex volume 10, clinical regulation, Annex 3rd guidance for the conduct of GCP inspections, computer system sector, drug and biological guidance, PICS, PI 011, drug guidance, ICH Q7, drug or biological regulation, EudraLex volume 4, drug biology regulation, chapter 4 documentation, regulation drug and biological, Annex 11 computerized system. I'm talking about the EudraLex dear. And drug biological regulation, Annex 15 qualification and validation, drug biological guidelines, PICS 009 guide to good manufacturing practice. So these are the guidelines or the references we can use to conduct our the audit or the assessment of the auditors. So now how can we prepare for the audit? For the audit team selection, number of the auditor, one is the lead auditor and second one is auditor team. In the case of auditor team, expert in specific validation activities. So these are the team, auditors team. And one is the lead auditor, expert and qualified person in this work. Next, what is the checklist? So we discussed the checklist in a brief. You can see the checklist in the media also. Like general topics, how long the vendor being in the business? Is an independent financial rating available? How long has the product of interest been on the market? In what industries does the vendor focus its resource? Does the vendor have the certification like ISO, ISPE? Does the vendor strategy, business outlook and organization structure suggested a long-term commitment to the product and industry? Guys, here vendor have to return yes and give the reference no, give the why is there is no, and NA and why is there is no NA. So this type of the checklist can be used to assessment the vendor or the audit purpose. General audit policies, is there an overall program to ensure the software quality? Is the quality organization dependent from the IT organization? Is the quality organization independent from the IT organization? Does QA have a role in the system life cycle, especially in testing and system release? Does the quality group perform periodically audit of the system quality documentation and procedural compliance? System life cycle and requirement. So is there are formal SLC condition? Are detailed functional requirement available to clarity? Are there adequate independent quality assurance system throughout the software development? Do the requirement to adequate regulatory requirement like 21 CFR Part 11? Design and coding. Do formal coding standard and the guideline exist? Do formal user interface standard and the guideline exist? Do formal design document standard and exist? Are all the standards under the change control system? Testing. Is there a testing procedure? Are the test plan used to evaluate our software performance? Are tests summarized available? Are there test protocol and results? Are there traceability metrics between the specification and the program, between the specification and test? Are system change test? Does testing include regression testing of the unmodified functionally? System documentation. Does the system up to the date documentation? Is the documentation update each time a change is made? Is documentation managed using change control? What is the retention period for all the system related to documentation? How are paper record protected from loss? How are electronic record protected from loss? How are source code program and configuration setting managed and protected? Are backup retained in a separate source location? Is there a disaster recovery plan? We already discussed in our previous discussion. DRP. Has the plan been executed? Means any tested was done, any mock audit was done for the DRP. Security. Is there an adequate security system to prevent the unauthorized modification of source code, build and distribution copies of the software? Are the development at the manufacturing facility adequate, secured against unauthorized entries? Procedural. Is the system supported by the approved procedures? Are procedure under change control? Are the procedure of periodically review? Change management system. Are the system change documented? Are changes evaluated for the degree of testing needed? Are configuration change documented? Is the system documentation update when change are made? Are user and support personnel retained when change are made? Are system change documented? Are the evaluation for degree of testing needed? Are configuration change document? Is system documentation update when change are made? Are user and supported person retained when the changes are made? So something same as previously. Support. Does the vendor utilize the maintained support agreement? Are prior release adequate support? The vendor help desk support function to software and hardware adequate? Does the documentation for the new release of the product provided? Incident management. So incident management, very important part of the audit. So are system incident documented? Are record maintained for all known problem for each revision? Are system incident evaluated to determine the correction and the preventive activities? Are system user made aware for critical system defected? How quickly? Does the vendor have a effective program for resolving documented defects? Data integrity and protection. Is the system secured by unique user IDs and password? Are there control to ensure that data can only be entered and changed by the authorized person? Is access to high level of the access super user restricted? The critical data verified by a second person or by a validate electronic method? Audit trail. Is there an audit trail for the critical data and activities? Does the audit trail include user, date, time? Can the audit trail be reviewed or irregularity? For irregularity. Are there policies and procedure for the assess potential supplier of the hardware and software? Is documentation provided by the vendor reviewed and approved internally? So we can see that all the things, maybe some are repeated, so don't mind that. The motive of this discussion is to requirement to understand the audit. Okay, so we understand this checklist very well. We can prepare in our SOP. So preparation of audit by the vendor. So how can vendor prepare? Review the checklist. He should review the checklist, he or she. Determine which system are in scope. Staff the audit team. Locate the documentation and procedure. Conduct the mock audit. So this type of preparation vendor can be do. So dear, we see that how is important our GxP system, which is handled by the computerized system, and how is vendor is very important, and this is very important for vendor also. So these two things should be balanced in this way, that what we need as a regulatory requirement and what is vendor need to fulfill our requirement. If these two are not matching or the balance or the given same platform, there is a very differentiation created. Let's take this. What you promised, vendor promised you to prepare what and what you get. So this is the one slide which can help us to understand what we require and what the vendor give us. So after this wonderful concept, let's come. We did the procedure, we did the audit. Now rating of the vendor, audit report, request of for corrective action, audit follow. Okay, post audit, on the basis of scope of audit, we can rate the vendor as software handling procedure, what is the validation document, what is the strategy for the validation, strategy of qualification of the software, and what is the training procedure. So we can rate the audit. For report, we can prepare a format or the report system where we can add the name of organizer, auditing organizer, date, location, mode of audit, scope of audit, audit team, like this. And we can add the observation and where which is major or minor or any suggestion, and which guidelines is the difference, if any. Then conclusion, where is the conclusion, which can be finally signed by lead auditor, which we choose previously, selected previously, and then head quality. Request for corrective action. If we want, everything is good, but there is 2 or 3 things have to be corrected or can be used after the good corrections. So corrective action, we give the one notification for corrective action, and they correct and give the target date for that from the auditor, from the auditee, sorry, from the auditee, by the auditor. So what is the follow-up? Audit report for the vendor, corrective action requirement. If you think no, then close the audit, retain the document. If you think yes, response to corrective action, verify the corrective action taken by the vendor. If satisfactory, then yes, modify vendor rating, close the audit, retain the record. If no, then close the audit and retain the record. Next, warning letter. As I take this pic from the media, where software and computer warning letters are characterized as this: validation, data retention, security, audit trail, data integrity, system documentation, SOPs and training, CAPA and others. So we can see there is many observation from the FDA about the GxP computer system using for GxP environment. So let's discuss some warning letters. Failure to establish and maintain the adequate procedure to ensure that all the purchased product and the service conform to specified requirement. The procedure which address vendor selection, qualification, requalification of supplier has not been implemented. There is no documentation that the supplier of MS was qualified or requalified. The firm has been purchasing the software from the vendor since 1996. This is the warning letter, well-known warning letter. You can see that. The firm requirement to requalify vendor are not based on the vendor's ability to meet a specific requirement, including quality requirement. In addition, the criticality of the purchased product or the service is not evaluating for the determining the needs to requalify supplier. So you can see the now one of the warning letter that your quality unit failed to qualify and perform routine audit of multiple supplier of computer software used for the GxP computerized system, Empower 3 software and LIMS. So guys, this is very important for us. If we are using any software for the GxP environment for the testing of raw material in process and finished product and any quality related things, then we have to consider this observation. Next, firm failed to complete the purchasing control activity according to the purchasing control procedure. This selection approval of service provider for the software supplier responsible for the software development for the medical device. Firm SOP dash purchasing control for the outside service does not ensure the software supplier complete both functional and structural software testing. So we see the warning letter, we see the requirement in the regulatory environment, we see the checklist which is available as per the regulatory requirement in the media, in the different type of guidelines. We see how can we audit, we see we can choose any guideline or prepare our SOP and do the audit assessment of the vendor. So guys, thank you, remain with me, and I'm very happy that you are giving the very good response to me. Contact to me in my mail ID, and I'm requested again, if there is any query or any discussion, you can write me on my mail ID that is given here. And very thankful to all of you giving me such a good support to me, and thanks to all. So meet you again with a different topic, interesting topic. We will discuss about that. So till then, you should be remain healthy and with all the compliances, so we can do all. So goodbye friends, take care, be healthy.